y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's Adrienne. Hope you guys are doing good today. I know it's been a while. Just been kind of not feeling myself, and I didn't want to like force record something when I knew that I wasn't feeling my best. So I took a few days off, but I'm back. And today's video is actually kind of a heavy one, which is another reason why I haven't recorded, because I knew that this video was coming, but it's still very difficult to talk about even today. But this is a story time about my brother being murdered. Bear with me. I talked about this a little bit in one of my past videos, and I think some of you thought that I was referring to my brother who was a Jehovah's Witness. So not referring to that brother. I have a host of brothers and sisters, but specifically from my mom, I have two brothers, and they are both older than me. So like my oldest brother is 10 years older than me, and then the brother that I'm talking about today, Jamal, he was probably 3 years younger than him. So by the time I was like up of age at all, like they were pretty much gone, especially my older brother. He lived with his dad for a while, then he lived with our grandmother. All three of us have different fathers. My brother Jamal was in trouble a lot as a child, unfortunately. Like a lot, he was in trouble like with the law a lot. We were not as close as my older brother and I were. I remember being jealous of my brother because of the fact that he was in trouble a lot, and then it always, to me, to my like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7-year-old mind, it always seemed like he was getting a lot of attention that I wasn't getting. But it was of course because he was, you know, constantly in trouble. Like my parents were constantly having to like go to either the police station or juvenile detention or just something like that. There was one incident where he and I were standing like out by the laundry room, and he was like telling me that he was getting ready to run away. And of course I was like young, and you know, I didn't really know what was really going on or whatever. And he was like saying goodbye to me. And that evening, of course, when my parents got home and he wasn't there, of course, they ended up calling the police, and my brother was actually on the news. And so, you know, I'm thinking in my head like, oh, like that's not fair. Like, you know, he gets to be on the news, like not really, you know, realizing what was going on. I wanted that attention, right? So I ended up running away myself. So it was one night, I waited until my parents had gone to sleep, and I went and like, we lived in a double wide growing up. And so I put up the window, pushed out the screen, and I had like a little backpack, threw it out the window, and kind of like somehow managed to quietly climb out the window without waking up my parents. I had it in my mind that if I could get to Washington, I was gonna like be a stowaway on a boat and somehow get to like England, because you know, I have this fascination with England and everything English. So, you know, that was my plan. I was gonna get on a boat, sneak on a boat, and set sail to England and like start my new life. Probably not even a mile up the street from my house, I finally gave up, and like I saw somebody's light on, and I knocked on the door and went in and like, you know, called my parents, and anyway, ended up going back home. So that was like my failed attempt at running away. I say that because, you know, my brother was like getting all of this attention, or so I thought, and I wanted some of that as well. I was like, I want my picture on the you know, news or whatever. He went to jail, you know, and or prison before a few times, if I'm honest. And he's been to rehab. Actually, the rehab that he went to was here in Durham. So every time I see the vans or the trucks or whatever, it's called Trosa, and they have like different, they have a retail store, a moving company, all different stuff. So every time I see that, I always like think of my brother. He moved to Washington, DC. So before I get to the meat of the story, there was an incident where my brother had kind of disappeared for a while, and we didn't realize it at the time. Like everybody was looking for him. I was like posting stuff on Facebook when I was on Facebook, and you know, just trying to figure out where he was, and you know, come to find out he had been arrested and he was in jail, and so that's why, you know, nobody had heard from him. So anyway, skipping forward, my brother was murdered at the end of April, but we didn't find out until a few days later, and it was already May. At the time that my brother was murdered, I was living in Morrisville. My kids and I were living in Morrisville. I had just quit my teaching job, and you know, I was feeling really good, started working out, so I was like in a good place mentally. My kids and I had made the decision to travel the world. Like we were gonna leave and go to Mexico. We ended up having to come back to Greenville, and we did like a little goodbye tour. My kids and I stopped by the gravesite of my grandmother. And because when I was in Greenville, I used to go by her gravesite like regularly and like either leave flowers or leave something. And I ended up going and leaving flowers. And, you know, we stood there for a few minutes, had a moment or whatever. And while I was standing there, I get a phone call from my stepdad. And my stepdad's like, where are you at? And then I told him where I was at. And he's like, well, are you coming back here to the house? I want to tell you something. I got to talk to you about something. So I'm like, okay. It didn't really strike me as anything was like wrong. To be honest with you, like I know my stepdad for the most part, and a lot of the things or a lot of the ways that he talks, like I can tell like, oh, my mama must have put him up to this, or like my mama must have told him, you know, to say this or whatever. So that's kind of what I was hearing in his voice. Like I was hearing her through him. And I was like, oh, what is it now that she wants? So we get back into the car, the kids and I, and we're driving back. I think I got another phone call from my stepdad, like, where are you? Like, and I was like, I'm on the way. Like we literally just left the gravesite. From Aden to where my parents were was like maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes. So, you know, I was like, yeah, I'm coming. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. So then we get maybe 4 or 5 miles up the street. And if you're from Greenville, you know the McDonald's on Memorial Drive, we get to that light. And then I get another phone call from them. And I pick up, and it's my mom. And she just like blurts out, like, Jamal has been murdered. Jamal has been murdered. Somebody stabbed him to death. The worst feeling that I can even describe. That was the worst possible thing that I could hear. And I was driving at that. So to be honest, I was really upset with her for a while after that. Because I'm like, why would you say that while I'm driving? Like I told you. Like I told you that I was on my way. Like why would you? I was so upset with her for the longest time because I was like, why would you say that like while I'm driving? I told you that I was on my way, so like why would you just call me and blurt that out? So she says that I like immediately started crying, and Ava was crying. I think Gabe was the only one that had like a straight face through the whole thing. I guess the police from DC called my mom and told her, you know, that they had found a body, that he'd been identified. And I remember it was really weird to me because I'm like, well, how can they say that he's been identified? Like we haven't been up there, we haven't identified his body. But what I wasn't realizing was that when you're in the system, like if you've already been arrested or whatever, of course they take your fingerprints and all that. So that's how they were able to identify him. But I didn't realize that at the time. And I was still like holding out hope that maybe it wasn't him, because like I said, he had disappeared before and he was in jail. So I was still like hopeful that, you know, it wasn't him. Maybe he's just somewhere, you know, sitting in jail somewhere. I couldn't go anywhere at first because I was just so like stunned at my parents' house. And I went outside. I don't even think I came in the house, or maybe I went in briefly, but I sent the kids in there and I came outside, and like I was standing behind the barn, like where my parents were staying at the time. It was like out in the country, and it's like nothing but like fields like on 3 sides of the house. So I was just standing out in the backyard behind the barn, just kind of like, you know, I don't know, just thinking. And I think I might have called my best friend at the time to tell her. And I'm Googling it, you know, on my phone. I'm like Googling his name, and just, I wasn't seeing anything. Like initially, his name wasn't bringing up any reports. So that was like further in my mind, okay, this could be a complete mistake, you know, like mistaken identity or whatever. And the kids and I ended up going back to Morrisville, and I don't even think I slept that night. I was like up all night Googling and like trying to search, you know, I was putting in like stabbing victim or whatever, and nothing conclusive was coming up. There, if you put in like stabbing DC, like you get a ton of stories because it's such a high crime rate city. The next day, sure enough, I found the first article that like actually had, you know, his name attached to it and like the location. Then it was like, wow, you know, my brother's dead. I was honestly like, I was very, I don't know if distraught is the word, but I was definitely in shock and just like, I can't believe it. Like, just the idea of my brother not being here is just, even today, like I'll be driving somewhere and I'll just think about him and it's just like, wow, like Jamal is not here anymore. I don't know, even to this day, and this was back in 2019, but I don't still have all the facts. And part of that is because of my mom. Like my mom was very selective in what she was choosing to share. So we all went there, but my parents ended up going to DC to see the video. There's actual like video of what happened. The police put all of that together to show them because they wanted to see it. Supposedly we'll have a chance to see it, like myself and I guess my brother, and then one of Jamal's other brothers will have a chance to see it when the case is over with. I don't know, but anyway, let me back up real quick. So we ended up going to DC. So when I say we, my parents and Jamal's brother went in one vehicle. Then myself, my kids, and my older brother, we went in my car. We drove to DC with the intention of like seeing him one last time. And that was like a whole ordeal because I don't know, it kind of gave me flashbacks of what happened with my dad. Like DC, like they have like such weird restrictions, I guess, when it comes to how you can see the body or whether or not you can see the body. Like we went initially to, I think, the police station. Yeah, we went to the police station and like talked to like detectives or whatever that kind of explained what happened. Then we went to some other building. I want to say it was like the coroner's office or somewhere, and we were thinking, or at least my mom was telling us, that we were going to be able to see him there, but we were not. They were going to show us like the crime scene photos, and so my mom was like, no, I'm not doing that. We then contacted like the funeral home because you have to make like some arrangements. It was a whole, y'all. When I say it was a whole ordeal, it was a whole ordeal because I guess it's only by the grace of God that we were able to actually see him, because I don't think that we were supposed to. Not then. Like I think we would have had to have sent his body back home. Which my mom was toying with that whole idea, but that didn't happen because she ended up cremating him. Like I said, it was a whole thing, because at one point she was gonna bring him back home, then it was like, no, that's gonna cost too much money, like we'll just cremate him there and then send his ashes back, which is what ended up happening, sort of. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. So my brother was, basically he got into an argument with a group of people on the bus, because my brother worked at a restaurant at a hotel, and got into an argument with some people on the bus, and then that argument kind of carried on as they got off. I think my brother pulled his knife, and then somehow they got it off of him, and then there were people that were holding him down while somebody else ended up stabbing him to death, basically. He was stabbed like, I think 7 times from what my mom said. There were maybe 4 or 5 people involved. He was pushed down like an escalator. Where this happened at was like entrance to like a subway station or whatever, metro station. Yeah, he was like pushed down the escalator, And when he was actually found, he was found like slumped up against like the gate, because the station was closed, or so they say it was closed at the time. So yeah, it's like one big mess. Initially, you know, I was like, yeah, I want to go whenever they finish everything. I want to go and I want to see the video, because I don't know, it was really hard for me to believe that, you know, my brother always like carried some sort of weapon to protect himself, because he was so like, he was used to like the streets or whatever, so he was street smart. But I don't know, I don't know what, I just wanted to see it for myself. Now I don't know, I honestly don't know. I have to wait until I get to that particular bridge to see whether or not I want to cross it. Part of me feels like obligated, you know, like if it were me, would he have done it for me? Probably. Initially, like right after he was murdered, they did not find the people that were responsible. Like they were on the run for like weeks. So going there again and like remembering, you know, last Thanksgiving, we were just together. Like my kids and I went up there and we spent time with my brother. We went out to eat actually. And just knowing that like from November to May, he's dead. It's just, I don't know. It was just, I hated it. I hated the area. Even now, it's like, I don't really like Maryland, DC. Like it's just, it's not a happy place. When I think about it, it's not really a happy place for me. And I wanna get past that. The whole time we were there, like when we went to the police department, I don't know, I was just like looking at everybody, you know, because based on the description of the people who did this, like I knew that they were like black dudes that had dreads and stuff. And like, I'm just looking around at everybody, you know, knowing that they haven't caught these people yet. And yeah, it just, everybody was like a suspect. My mom ended up finally getting a funeral home to pick up his body. And so I guess she made plans for the funeral home to go ahead and get him and bring him back to the funeral home in order for us to see him. They were gonna allow us to see him. And that was something else. Like my older brother did not see him, he stayed outside. But they brought him in and he was still in the body bag. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder if I should have, you know, seen him myself, because it's an image that I will, you know, obviously never get out of my mind, you know, seeing my brother, you know, laying on a gurney in a body bag, like literally defrosting, like right in front of me, right in front of my face. And my brother's other brother, he was there, and I was just like, God, like, I mean, he looked just like he was sleeping. Like he could just sit up at any minute and like just start talking. Like it was so trippy. But they finally caught the people that were involved. And I like I said, I think it was like 4 or 5 people. It was like mostly dudes, and there was like one girl that was involved, which is like, what makes it even worse, I feel like, is the fact that my brother's father was also murdered. Like when my brother was a baby, of course this long before I was even thought about, but when my brother was a baby, his father was actually murdered. When my mom and him were married, and they stayed in Ayden, North Carolina. But yeah, and it was like some crazy situation again. It was like he was like murdered and then brought out on the front porch, and they put like a water hose in his mouth and stuff. It was just really crazy. And then for him to like himself to end up being murdered, it's just, I don't know, it's just like, wow, like, God. But it stuck with me for a while, that image of him laying there and, you know, just trying to make peace with the situation, but then also just like wondering like what was on his mind, you know, those last few moments, wishing that, you know, somebody could have been there. from what we heard from the, I guess, the ambulance report or whatever, like when they arrived, like there was no chance, you know, there was no, what am I trying to say? There was no chance that he was going to be saved. Nothing that anyone was going to be able to do, like whether they got him to the hospital or anything. There was nothing that could have been done. Because I mean, you know, you stab that many times, of course, but I don't know, you always hear things, you always hear worse things, right? Like, I don't know, people are shot multiple times and they make it. So I don't know, considering the kids and I were getting ready to travel, it was really on my mind a lot. Like, God, like, why couldn't he have just gotten his passport and got out of the US, you know? Maybe if he were able to go somewhere else, because he was always on the go. Like, he was always moving around. He kept his stuff in storage, but then he would like stay with other people and he would move here and move there. And I was like, why couldn't he have just, you know, I don't know, found this whole traveling lifestyle and like actually gone out and done it seriously, you know what I mean? Because I feel like that would have been great for him, because I feel like a lot of his issues were environmental. You know, he left North Carolina, where he left Greenville initially, you know, to get away from the environment that was here. And I think he went to like Raleigh or Charlotte or something like that. And then he left there and went to DC. I try to focus on the good, like the good memories that I have. And like I said, we weren't exceptionally close, like definitely not as close as my oldest brother and I, but he was still my brother and I still loved him very much and would have done anything I could for him. You know, I'm sad. I'm really sad that his life had to be taken, especially in that manner. The last time that he came to Greenville, which my brother usually came back to Greenville like maybe once a year, and the last time he came back, he ended up like taking out an insurance policy, but I guess it wasn't enough. And that, again, that was like a whole nother situation with like the insurance policy and getting the payout, and there was like some fund, like a victims fund in DC that was supposed to pay for the funeral. And I was trying to help out because at one point she was like, well, find a funeral home that'll do XYZ. And so I found a funeral home, but then she didn't like that one. My oldest brother and I were just like, you know, because, you know, she wanted to do everything herself, and people were saying, no, maybe, you know, you don't need to do this again. Like, you know, you buried a husband, like his father, so maybe you just need to fall back and let other people do it. But she didn't want to do that, so it got to the point where we just literally like left it alone. Like it just wasn't worth the hassle. It was actually an elder from the Kingdom Hall that did his service, and like I don't know, we were just looking at each other like, what? Jamal wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. So what made it equally upsetting was like the brother came up to me, you know, like after the ceremony, and is like trying to witness to me, like at my brother's funeral. Like, what the hell? No, not the time. Not that the time is ever, you know, gonna occur, but definitely not at a funeral. To this day, like, I am not 100% sure what happened to my brother's ashes. There was talk that she like just poured his ashes out in the backyard of the house that they used to stay at. Like, so many people wanted to do different things. Like, there was some organization in DC that was like, I guess, trying to advocate for victims of violent crimes, and they wanted to hold like a vigil, like a candlelight vigil or something like that, and she didn't want to do that. It was just crazy. It was, and there was a lot of animosity. There was a lot of hurt, definitely because of like her decision. Like, she didn't want to include anybody else. We just kind of ended up just letting her do what she wanted, because she was going to anyway, right? She was, you know, technically his next of kin, so there was nothing really that anybody could do. It was like a couple of his workmates that actually came from DC to North Carolina for the service, so that was sweet. Even to this day, it's like I can't really believe that my brother is gone. Like, he's not here. It's really, when I think about it, it's really hard to believe, like, he's gone. So in any case, that is the story. I'm curious if I have any like DC subscribers that heard about this case. My brother's name was Jamal Farrell. He would have been 43 this year. And yeah, we miss him. That's the video for today. I hope you guys, I won't say enjoyed it, but thank you for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.